Start momentarily. Thank you all so much for your patience.
See a little better this way.
Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Alexandra. I am your webinar moderator for today. Today's webinar is Responsible AI Foundations, and it's being presented by Bernadette Jaramillo, who has 25 years of experience in governance, contracts, and ethics. So fairly new to the scene, I imagine. Today, I will be operating her slides. So first of all, a couple of housekeeping things. One, this is a live recorded session. Yeah, Nicole, we were having a little bit of video issues today, so Bernadette will be a little blurry, but maybe that means that the clarity comes in the message. But she is here and we're very happy to see her, even if in a soft focus. What we're going to do is I'm going to be guiding the slides by sharing my screen. I'll do my best to also respond in the chat, but Bernadette has said that we're going to take a brief moment in between each slide to answer any questions. So please, at that point, come off mute, raise a hand, drop in the chat. I'll do my best to navigate the chat while I'm also sharing the slides. But just in case in case I miss it, please just feel free to speak up. And then at the end, of course, there will be a little feedback summary for the call. And any tech issues, please do let me know. Otherwise, I warmly welcome Bernadette. Happy to have you, and enjoy your presentation.
Thank you.
I'm going to start.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today. I apologize for the technical difficulties. Anyway, I can't see the screen from here. I see you.
I'm giving one moment. I'm just finding your, yes, here it is. I'm going to share it. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then I'm going to just give me one moment. I'm going to
expand it.
Yep.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Welcome to Introduction to Responsible AI. I know there's been a lot of conversation, as you probably see in the news and online and everywhere. Everybody is talking about governance and using AI responsibly. And that's really important, especially at this time, because there are so many things that are out there, a lot of information. Can you go down one, please? That we sometimes get confused on what we should be doing, why we shouldn't be doing it, and what we need to be doing. So AI is rapidly transforming business decisions, and that's every day, and so many different applications out there. And organizations are adopting AI quickly. Without governance, AI can create serious risks. And when I say organizations are adopting AI quickly, they are adopting it without doing the governance portion of it. It makes such a difference. And it's like if you're an IT project manager, as an example, or just a project manager, you have to have everything laid out with contracts and governance. That's all part of governance to ensure the safety of the client, and of course, the safety of you as the individual who is performing these services. Okay. Any questions on that? Why it matters today, anybody? Okay. Let's go on. So, simple definition, AI systems analyze data and they generate predictions or recommendations. The important thing is that you're asking the right questions and that you are making sure that you understand what the customer wants and and who is responsible for what area. So many examples are new hiring tools. There's a lot of hiring tools out there. Some say this one is better than the other. It's a matter of preference. Fraud detection, you have to be careful. That's a top priority, and things are going on out there that are causing a lot of mischief, let's just put it that way, and it's making people uncomfortable with it. And they want to make sure that people understand what they're doing and that they are in control and that they understand it. Because when you've never had to adopt or you use AI and you like certain portions of it, that's fine. But when you're setting up something for a business, you need to really make sure that you understand the processes and how it reflects on you and on the business. And of course, and then the structure of AI, because if we don't understand it, we shouldn't be doing it. There's a lot of chat bots out there and anything like that. I mean, chat bots are good. They do serve their purpose, but they have to be trained and you have to teach them what they need to be doing. So that's another thing. People are using that a lot, and it can be good and bad. It just depends on how you use it. Medical diagnostic screening and risk identification, those are really critical right now. So many medical people are using this. And actually, I have been to a couple of conferences where I've seen that they've used it appropriately, where they need to be, the questions they're asking, making sure that you still have that human element to it, as opposed to just all AI. Because anytime you work with AI and you just start plugging in things, prompting, and you're not sure about it, you still have to make sure that when you're reviewing anything that you do, that you have human oversight. Always make sure you have human oversight, that somebody understands it, somebody can pick that up afterwards to look at it and say, oh yeah, this works, but this doesn't, we need to change this. Because AI only is as good as you ask the questions and how you prompt it. So if those are important aspects to this, is understanding how to use it appropriately, so that when you are working for somebody, that you know how to ask these questions. You need to know what to look for. And if your person or your business is not AI savvy or doesn't know how to do these things, then you need to really look at that very closely, because you have to be on top of it to make sure things are running smoothly. Any questions on this slide? Okay. What is responsible AI? It means they are designed and used in ways that are ethical, that are safe, that are transparent, and accountable. And when I say that, it is all of that. You need to make sure that when you're doing something, you're ethically making sure that you are following the scope of work that you are supposed to be doing for that person, or developing a program to help individuals. You need to be safe and ask those questions and know it is protected. Because, even with AI, you have to be careful, because you never know who is looking or has access. When you put it out there on ChatGPT and you don't prompt it or hide your prompt, everybody is able to see it. And so those are little tidbits that you need to remember, because it can cause havoc later. And just making sure that, depending on the work that you're doing, if you have individuals, names, numbers, social securities, or any kind of work that is private, let's just say if you're working for an accounting firm and you are updating their system and there's names and numbers, social security, tax information, any kind of information that's private to that individual, you need to make sure that you have those guardrails in place to make sure that that information is safe. And of course, you want to be transparent in what you're doing. Very, very, very important. And the person who is most accountable is who? You, me, whoever is doing this work. But You always need to be accountable to the person that you're working for as well, that you're transparent, you're showing what you're giving them, telling them how to do it. If you have a contract, and this is where governance is very important. If you're doing something, make sure it is in writing what you are supposed to be doing, that you have good communication to let them know this is where you're at. You're transparent. They know exactly what's going on. It's a lot of communication. If something breaks, who's responsible? It's those kinds of things that you have to worry about. Anybody can go out and say, I can do this, this, and that. Some people can, some people can't. But I'm a firm believer that when you are working for somebody and you are starting to discovery, you make sure you ask the questions. They tell you what they want. And many times they're still not sure what they want. So you need to reiterate it and ask them the question back, maybe in another way that they can understand it or a way that they didn't think about it. But to make sure that you are doing exactly what they want you to do. It's very, very important. I can't stress enough how important the ethical portion of it, safe, transparency, and accountability, those are all there. You have to make sure when you're working with people that you are transparent in everything that you do and that you are communicating this to whomever you have started to work with in partnership. So if you've signed a contract or you're negotiating a contract, be very, very specific, very, very specific, because governance is probably one of the most important things as long as your contract is in alignment with what they want you to do as well. Any questions? Okay, next one. This is just the first part of it. In the next series, we're going to go into detail, much more detail, but this is just kind of a quick overview for this part of it. So you have your 4 responsible AI pillars. We talked about transparency. Understand how AI decisions are made. This is where the transparency is especially important because you are communicating what you are doing, how you are doing it, and that they understand it as well. Because the human element is very, very important here. Because whatever you're going to do and you do it with AI, you have to be very careful on how you enter your information and that it's accurate information. And then it goes into the next part, who's accountable? Someone owns the outcome. Anything you enter there and you are the subject matter expert or you're the contractor or you've signed the contract, you say you can do it and you know what you're doing. But also meeting with the group and always keep them in the loop. Because when you go off and you do things on your own and you're not communicating with the owner, the business owner, it makes it very difficult because as you're moving along, everybody needs to be on the same page. But if you've moved forward too fast, as an example, and you've missed something in between, you've got to take those steps back to start making sure they understand. So everybody is on the same page regarding accountability. Someone owns the outcome. You own the outcome, but also whoever is you're working with is equally accountable because you should be explaining to them what you're doing and how you're doing it and why you're doing it and make sure that they understand so that as you move forward, there's no misunderstandings. Safety is very, very important. Systems that are tested and monitored. You need to make sure that you're not putting your stuff out there for everybody to see, especially when it pertains to a client. You don't want to put their business name, what they're doing, what you're doing with it, because really there's private ways to do it, but you don't have to put it out there for everybody to know because very interesting. There's always somebody lurking in the background who knows and looks for those kinds of things and can sabotage you. I mean, it happens all the time though, too. So just be careful. And human oversight. That's really probably the most important, is the final decision authority. Whoever you have contracted to work with, you both should be having weekly, monthly meetings, whatever you all decide on. But somebody's got to be looking over your shoulder to make sure that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, and that the outcome you are projecting is what you show as far as the final product, or the step one. This is what I'm going to do. And these are the things that I plan on doing, step one, A, B, and C. And then when you move from that, you make sure that you have a meeting with your clients so they understand what A, B, and C are. And you're having difficulty on D because D doesn't work with the other three, or you have a challenge. You have to let them know always if there's something that is not working or you're concerned about. Easier to take care of any business ahead of time as opposed to later. Because if a change needs to be made, or they disagree, or they didn't think that's the way that they wanted the project to go, that's where you have to make sure that you're in constant communication so that they're aware of what's going on. So I always suggest weekly meetings and explain to them, because you'd be surprised, most people don't understand AI. They want you to be the expert. And depending on the job that you're doing for them, you need to be the expert. If you are not the expert and you need help, ask other individuals who are the experts in those particular areas. Because sometimes we're good at one area and we're not strong in the other area. So an example would be like me, the computer decides it doesn't work and I'm not the expert in my computer, and it slows me down, and that upsets me, as an example. But I can read contracts and look at ethics and things like that, and I can pick up the anomalies right off the bat, just looking at it. It's just years and years of reading and working with contracts and ethics. So you always just want to make sure that everything is in alignment. If it is not in alignment with what the customer wants and what you think he wants, you need to make sure that you're on the same page and understands what that is as you move forward. Transparency, that's being transparent. Accountability, you're being accountable because you're making sure the customer wants the service that you are saying you're able to do, and that you show them as you're moving along. Safety, always want to make sure you always use safety with anything else. And then you have the human oversight, because that's you and the customer. So they know what's going on. They can see it, because you don't want to be finished. Let's say you've been working 3 months alone and this is what you think. You haven't had much contact with the customer, but the customer says, okay, I can meet with you now. Let's review what you've accomplished to date. And then what happens is in this time that you've had time to work alone, you may have thought some other things that might be beneficial to the customer, but you need to make sure that the customer understands the direction, any changes, and why you're doing it. Documentation is so important, so important. And it just follows these 4 pillars. As long as you are doing what you need to do, you're accountable, you're transparent, they can see it. And the human oversight is you, but also making sure that the management understands what's going on. That will make your job so much easier, and the process can move forward. But when you move too far ahead without involving the client, then you will have issues, because they may not see it the same way that you do. So always be transparent, document all your information, and make sure that the customer understands exactly what you're doing and why. And you'd be surprised, sometimes in between there, they want to add other things because they hadn't thought about, oh, that's a good direction. But if I can do this part, that way everybody is on the same plate. You just want to make sure everybody follows those steps. Any questions? Okay. Nope. All right. Next. So this is probably one of my favorite models, and I call it the AI house model. And it's out there. They say the AI house model. So think about the framework for your own home. Okay. Your roof. You want to make sure that the roof that we start off with is going to be correct, that it is going to be in alignment, that your roof is going to be, it's going to be complete. It's sturdy. You trust that it's not going to cave in. You trust in that work. That's your roof, right? Then you have your pillars, everything that stands, that's all around. It's your transparency. Anything you do, you're transparent. It's your accountability, your safety, and your human oversight. And I just say those quickly because we've talked about them, but it's really, really important to think about that. When things are not going right and nobody is paying attention to the foundation is the governance portion of it, who ensures that everything should be working the way it should be. So it's like when you go have a house built, you want to make sure the pillars are up, right? You go and you look and you say, "Oh, this is good." I don't like the work. I don't like the I don't like the way the concrete is looking. They maybe used a cheaper product, and you're thinking, "Oh my God, that doesn't look good." You should be able to talk about that. When you, and I use this too, and I like it because my father was a carpenter. So I used to work with my father and we always built things together. So when it comes to this one always makes sense to me. So you always want to make sure that everything you're doing, that you're authentic in what you're doing, you're transparent, you're accountable. If something is not working, you're going to fix it. There's safety to make sure that those pillars stand up strong, that any of these AI changes you're doing, it's going to work. You want to make sure that they work. If something is not there and there's no governance and no oversight, meaning any of you who are working on it, and you don't have somebody looking at that foundation, if there's a problem, you need to make sure, because that's how governance works. We are the foundation. When there are issues that are going on, we want to make sure that it's correct at that point. We don't wait till the house is like lopsided and it's hard to fix it and have it straight again. Okay, when you go in and you're looking, and one thing I can say is I have a good eye. I can look and see if something is straight. If it's not, same thing with the foundation. It's when things are not, if nobody is speaking and one person is doing and never communicating with the stakeholder, you're always going to have an issue. And I say that lightly because you're not communicating, because what you think and what they think are usually two different things. So always make sure that you talk to them, ask them the questions, and keep in good contact. And governance is very important. So you're always keeping them in the loop as to what's going on, because sometimes we move far ahead because we want to get things done quickly. We want to make sure the foundation is solid and the roof's not going to cave in. Nothing is going to start going haywire. We're not worried about the building leaning to the right or to the left. And, maybe we forgot to put, you know, uh, 4 nails in the house so the structure stays up. We only went with one. So, if you have just even a little bit of something, it's going to start leaning over. We need to make sure that the information that we use is always, always responsible and thinking in mind of doing the right thing for that customer. But also, the customer has to acknowledge that the work that you're doing is on the right path of what they want. So sometimes what they say and what they want are always different. You have to be very, very clear. And with the governance that comes in with contracts and ethics, and the house, like I say, ethics is important in there. But if you're just not using the right tools and it's kind of loosey goosey, well, that house is going to blow down. It's going to fall. But if you're using the right nails and you're being authentic and you have the ethics to say, what, I'm this house is not sturdy. It's going to fall, and I don't know what to do. I'm listening to what you say, but this is what you want, and I'm not. We have a disconnect. Fix the disconnect before it becomes a disconnect is what I'm going to say. And then the foundation, then it's always solid because you have good communication. You're letting them know. And then in your contracts, in addition to that, with that governance, you need to make sure that you put in everything that they want. Always make sure you can or can't do it, but most importantly is that you need to have that communication, because so many of them, and this last year I've worked with some loosey goosey clients, and I'm just going to be honest with you. Some of them want this, some of them want that, but they don't really understand it. So you have to explain exactly what it means, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and this is going to be the outcome. And this is when I want to meet with you to make sure that you understand it. And this is the part that we're working on. And if they want to add things, then you have to be careful there too, because you're just in this one phase of it. They need to be able to understand that this is either what they want or they don't. And if they want those changes, then you kind of get stuck along the way because you never move forward because you're too busy staying within this part of it. You have to make sure the deliverables, everything is written down as to what you're going to do. And when they sign off of it and they understand it, then you're on the same page. But when you have no contracts, you have no structure and what you're going to do, because you're only saying it verbally, you've got to put it in writing. And I'll tell you why, because somebody has to be responsible afterwards. Who is going to be the responsible owner of that project? You or the customer? And that's something to think about, because if you're doing exactly what they want and you've met and you have fulfilled everything that they wanted and they've changed their mind because they want to do that, oh no, I should have done this first. You have to be clear about what you want to do at that moment, what we're going to do, and then go to the next phase of it. Because when you're jumping here and there and everywhere, it doesn't follow a contract. It doesn't follow the scope of work. It doesn't follow your deliverables. It's everywhere. But if you put things in order all the way through, your transparency, because then everybody sees it, the owner, your accountability, you're accountable because this is what the contract says, this is what you want me to do, and the safety in it, because you want to make sure that you protect the client as well. And the human oversight is yourself and also the owner, because they need to have oversight as to what's going on. They can't just say whatever you want to do and I hope that you do the right thing, but you have to sit down, explain it, have good communication so that this foundation is intact as you move forward. Maybe that's kind of all around here, a lot of information, but does that make sense to you all? It's a lot of information, but governance is really a lot of work because you have to make sure that you cover a lot of things in there and somebody is a responsible party at the end. And that's what you always have to remember. Okay, next. Okay, risk levels kind of goes hand in hand with what I had said a minute ago. But you have low risk, that's document summarization. When I said document, make sure you always document. Moderate is customer chat bots. I don't usually do chat bots, but that doesn't mean that they're not good. They have to be worked out. I think as long as you communicate and they like what you're doing, then that's what matters, and that it's ethical and that it gives them what they need and it's protected on the customer's end. And any high algorithm prohibited system. So let's just say you want to design something that really doesn't work with what the customer wants, but you know it's something that you think should be done, and it's prohibited because they don't match and they don't work together, these systems. You have to think about all of those things. They make a big difference. You know, AI is not just a technology issue, it's a decision-making issue. And that's where we have to remember. That's probably the most important thing. So those are low risk examples, and there's more examples, and those I will go into detail because the The class is structured for more of that. This is just a general overview. So just remember, think about the risk levels, but the most important is your documents that you document, summarize, let them know what you've done. And of course, it helps you because as long as you document and they have questions, you can always go back to what you've done. If you have made a change, you document that. Everything that you do, you document because the outcome is going to be in order if you document. There's no misunderstandings of what's occurred. And most importantly, you can look at it and say, oh, okay, I did this. So now we've had to make these changes per the customer. Documentation is key. It's just key all around. So you must document, you must make sure that you know what you've documented, what you've changed, and don't keep it up here. Keep it written on the computer, whatever, but just make sure that it is documented. Because just because you know it up here and God forbid something happens to you, what happens to the project, right? In the middle of changes and then nobody knows exactly how you got there, that's not a good thing. So I always just say documentation is very, very, very important. And make sure that always communication is important too. Documentation, communication, and your integrity, that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, that you're letting them know, and that you're comfortable with it, because that's the most important thing. And then make sure that somebody who understands contracts, that they can tell you that how to write it correctly to ensure that it takes care of you, but it also says this is what I'm going to be doing, and everybody is on board, because that way there's no misunderstandings. And if it requires more work, then you take care of it at that time, and you have to make an addendum to your contract to include that, because the customer says, oh no, now I want this. By you documenting, you make sure that any contract you have an addendum to it, and why you're making the changes, and the customer signs off of it. So work smart, because your original contract states exactly what you want to do. If there's a change or deviation, then an amendment to that needs to be added to protect you as well as you're working with somebody. So just remember, you want to protect yourself as well as the client. It's just because if they change their mind in between, you don't want it to be stuck because they didn't tell you they wanted that. And that's why meeting with clients, making sure they understand contracts are not at risk, and that you're all on the same page. That's a lot of responsibility, but documentation is key. So the AI responsibility triangle, your signature model. 3 questions organizations must answer. Responsibility, who manages the system? That's a good question. Who manages it? They should have somebody in IT. If you're making, let's just say, the changes, you're working with that person so that they understand what's going on. Harm, what risk could occur? Because risks are important and people don't think about it until later when they start to get into it and delve into it. You find out there are more risks, and you should have thought about that before. And I don't mean you, I mean the customer, because they only give you so much information. So sometimes when you have to do a deep dive, you need to make sure that you account for maybe any risks and look for those too, because you'll hear about it. Because sometimes when people are talking about this, they don't think about the big picture. They only think about the immediate solution. But that immediate solution may require several steps to get there, because this is where they're at and this is where they want to be. So somewhere in between, you're upgrading, updating, making changes, but the customer has to be held accountable as well, because you can't keep changing every little while. It needs to be structured. Accountability, who answers if something goes wrong? Think about it. Who answers if something goes wrong? If you are working with a system and you have done your due diligence and you have spoken to the owner or the organization, whoever, and they say, oh, I forgot to tell you that we have that interfaces, that's an old legacy system that we want some of that put into this new system, and they never told you. In the discovery, always, what else do you have? Do you have this, an old system? Do you have just this new system? Is there accountability there? Um, who manages it? Who works with? You have to ask all those questions in that due diligence. And if they don't tell you, then that also creates an issue too. So just make sure that you're asking the questions. Make sure, because you want to know all of these three things, because that makes a big difference. Any questions on that? Okay. Next. Thank you. If an AI system makes a harmful decision, who's responsible? This is the end of the question, I think, that I put here. Is it going to be the developer, the organization, leadership, or the system owner? And those are all things to do. So I want you to think about that, because when we come back next week for the next portion of it, I want you to think about that. If there's a harmful decision, who is the responsible person? The developer, which would be you, the organization, because they didn't tell you, the leadership, or the system owner. Those are all things that you need to think about. So when you're making decisions, this is where it's very important that you're all communicating. Everybody is involved and knows what's happening, and everything is transparent. It has to be. It has to be. And if you have to bring in different groups initially to get the full understanding of it, make sure you do that. If you are just meeting with, let's just say, the owner of the company, but he's not as IT savvy and doesn't understand that part of it, you really need to make sure your IT person is there for the changes they may want, or their fiscal person, because this has to do with fiscal information. They know better than the owner all of that information. So you got to make sure that you have all the right people at the table to handle all of these things. And that makes a difference, because everybody is in unison. If one does and one doesn't understand, set up a meeting and make sure you have all the right people there, because the owner knows so much, then your IT knows somebody, your manager knows somebody. Let's just say you have 4 pillars here. You have accounts payable, you have IT, you have grants, and something else. Whatever they are, bring them all to the table, because if you're working on all of it, you need to understand what's happening. If you're working on one portion of it, but you still need to know if they all work together for that one slice of the pie, so to speak. If they're not, then you know, but you have to make sure you're asking the right questions, because that's really the big thing, is understanding what they want. And they will change their mind. They will tell you this today, and 3 weeks later, they'll say, oh no, that's not really what I meant. I meant this. So you have to be very clear, and it's documented, and it covers your behind, really, and it makes sure that they're accountable as well. Because even though they're business owners, they have to be accountable, because they have to be transparent. If they're not being transparent with you and they're making you do all these things, and then something comes up later and it's not documented, it's not in your contract, well then, who failed to get the information? 2 ways to look at it. You, because you didn't ask any other questions, or ask if there are other parts of this that needed to be included and how it might be affected in discovery, or the owner who chose not to tell you and he's the responsible part. Do you see what I mean? So you have to just make sure that you're communicating, because you want to make sure that you have the correct information, and that the person who are most responsible in any organization and who is asking you to make changes is equally as responsible. And when we get into contracts later, you'll understand, but you have to make sure that you have to document, document, document. And that is the biggest thing I think that has to happen with AI systems right now at this time, because small changes can sometimes make impactful changes for individuals. Other times it can just harm the process because we didn't do our due diligence and what we needed to do regarding the process. So when you're making changes, you document, document, document. If somebody wants you to make a change, get it in writing to cover your behind basically, because in that way, there's no misunderstandings. So documentation right now, I think, is very important in AI systems because there's a lot of value there, but you want to make sure it's protected. You want to make sure it works. You want to make sure that you're accountable, but the business owners are accountable. You want to make sure you have all the right information and the product that you produce is exactly what they wanted. And that's where your contract protects you as well. So you can't have 20 meetings at one time and change it 20 times. It has to be, you have to make sure that you understand what they're asking, provide it, document it, and what they say, and that they understand it, and it's all in writing. And then you review those notes too, so that they understand it. Everybody is on the same page. If you only write notes and you never discuss it with the business owner, and they don't know in their mind that's what they said, because sometimes when we think, as an example, I might say, oh, I really would like for you to look at my, I have 4 different applications, and one of them is a legacy system. We don't use it anymore, but the other 3 are great, and I want you to make some changes to do whatever application. And then later along the line, that legacy system is very important because they still work off of it and they need that information. But they don't think about that because it only comes up if you have an audit or somebody has to go back and look at that information or decide what to do with it. So it's very, very important that for any kind of decision that you make regarding applications, regarding AI, that you document, document, document. And it just makes your job easier. It's a lot to document. You can also have, AI record your meetings, whatever. But just make sure that when you're looking at that it catches every single thing, because you want to make sure that everything you're doing is ethical, because that's what was said. The notes are there. You can send them notes, make sure people who are responsible, and then put always in your, when you're meeting with clients and let's just say you're meeting with the president and the accounts person, and they needed the other finance person to be there, but was never included, but he has an opinion. And you document, and you always ask, are you sure these are the only people that you want included in this? Because the outcome, we want to make sure everybody's involved. If we're making a change, everybody is involved in it so that everybody understands it. Or if they don't need to be involved and the owner wants to be the only one making the decision, that's fine. They own it. But if you're not documenting, he's not sure, and he signs a contract that says you're this, then it makes them the responsible party. You're doing exactly what they say. So documentation is very, very important at this time, especially with AI, and understanding what they want. So I think with that in mind, just always remember that you know what you're doing, that you are the responsible person because you're meeting with the client. But most importantly, you're documenting it, you're keeping things in order, and any changes you make, everything is authentic. And that makes the difference right there. Then let's say you have me as the other person who was working on another project, but I never documented. And I just said, oh, they said this. and so agreed, and I'll do those things. But I forgot about those. I never asked what they did or who needed to be included, who was responsible, who could be part of these meetings, who would have an impact, who needed to look at it. That would be a shame on me because I didn't ask any questions. I just felt that I just needed to work with that one person. I didn't need to document. I didn't need to be as accountable because it was just between me and that person. But when they're paying you and it's not documented on your notes that you take weekly or however long you meet or what your changes you're going to make, as long as you document everything, you're great. And I mean it seriously. But when you don't document and you're just doing it on this is what they say, but you're not doing the follow through on certain things, then it's a shame on you too. So just make sure the documentation is impeccable. Make sure that any contract, that everything you're doing is associated to that contract. If, and that's just governance, that person doing the oversight. Make sure, because then everything you're responsible for what they tell you and what you should be doing and what you're providing. And somebody is overlooking that. That makes a big difference too. And everybody is on the same page. But if you have a manager that doesn't want to look at it and wants to put it in your hands completely, that's good. He trusts you, but you better make sure that when he's giving you that much trust, that you understand what he wants and what you're doing. And that's all I can say to that, because people change their mind, and you'd be surprised how often do this, do that, and you're going, oh no, that's not what you asked for. But people don't understand, so you always have to make sure they understand what it is that you provide, what you can do, and what they want, and they can convey it. And sometimes they don't convey it correctly, and then that causes understandings, misinformation. So those are just little tidbits. Just make sure that you have to, you always document. This is a governance and oversight and developing is a lot of documentation. So make sure that that part is up to date, because it protects you as well, along with your contract based on whatever it is that you sign. Any questions on this? Okay. Do I have one more slide? Or
Nope, this looks like the end.
okay.
Yeah.
I know that governance and is very, very important this year. It seems like 2026 has been the year where they really want a lot of governance and they want some oversight on that. But the governance and is only as good as the information you provide, is only as good as the contracts that you do, and that you make the changes that you need to make. Um, if you are not doing those things, it'll hurt you in the long run. And I say that because it's true. Documentation is key to anything that you do regarding a project. You have to document, you have to outline it. You provide your minutes, you talk about it. Next steps, this is where we're at. So AI is very much similar to that. And a lot of people don't know exactly what they want. So you have to start asking the questions. And you also partner up with other people because everybody has different levels of experience and expertise. And I highly, highly recommend that I encourage you to work with other individuals as well, because you all have a lot of knowledge to share, and they have a lot of knowledge to share with you. Any questions?
I don't believe so.
Okay, well, thank you. I apologize. We were running a little late with technical difficulties, but most importantly, we'll go have very specific. I know I threw a lot of other information in there, but really governance is very, very important right now. And I think that we just need to make sure that we're on top of it and document, because it covers your behind. You know, that's really the biggest thing. And I guess from as an IT project manager and oversight person, we always have to document. It's what covers It's what saves you when something is not right and it's not documented, and you say I'm going to do it, but it's not in your contract, then shame on you. You got to make sure you include all of those things. But this will be more interesting as we're going along. This is just oversight on this particular AI portion of it, and just letting you know. But it's still important to make sure that you document. That's really the key. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bernadette. That was wonderful. And I think incredibly valuable. Thank you all so very much for joining. Um, and hope to see you again in a couple weeks for our next session. And everybody stay safe out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll see you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Bernadette. I'm going to close the room. That was awesome. We did it.
We did it. Did
We
it come
did
out
it.
okay though? I just,
I think so. I think so. I was able to follow everything and yeah, I think it was wonderful. And I also, like I said, I think the topic is incredibly important.
it is. And it's a lot of the same thing. It's documentation. You don't realize how important documentation is right now. It
Oh,
is very, very
totally. CYA, right?
YA yourself. I know I was going to say that, but I was trying to be
Professional.
politically
Well, thank you.
okay.
And I hope to
Thank you.
be at your next one. And
I
otherwise,
hope
just take
so.